I was sitting on my bed, waiting for it to be time to leave, when Steve came into the room, followed by me son, Charles, and Alice. Our rooms had come stocked with a wide variety of clothes, and we all wore heavy pants, long-sleeved shirts, and sturdy boots, which I hoped would be comfortable for wilderness trekking. Our bags were already packed, and Steve told me he had stuffed his with packages of nutritional paste and condensed moisture from one of the compound stores. Smart move, I thought. They probably didn't have restaurants in the Forbidden Zone. I'm glad that you thought of that, I told him.
It was Alice's idea, he said. She's the only one who hasn't gotten used to being handed everything we need while we're here.
Alice shrugged.
Back before things got bad for him, my dad used to take me camping all the time.
I nodded, trying to tamp down the panic as I realized we'd almost traveled into the unknown without basic provisions. We were rushing into this. What else hadn't we thought of? Everything was happening too quickly. As if reading my mind, Steve said,
Could it be we're being plagued, mate?
I've been thinking about that, but I paused, remembering we were probably being bugged. Unless our old associate turned evil while we were gone, I don't see how that's possible. Steve ran his fingers from the tip of his nose to the base of his neck, probably his species' equivalent of scratching his head.
That's the trouble, yeah? I keep thinking in circles. I can't see any other option than what we're planning. I guess it just makes me wonder. It's like we're being pushed in this one direction.
Whatever comes, we shall deal with it, Charles said, as we always have.
Like Nyana did? Me-san demanded. She was doing her best to survive, and she didn't make it. The same with Urch and the other beings. There's no guarantee we're going to get through this. I know, I said. But there is a guarantee that we're in real trouble if we don't try.
You guys are such complainers,
Alice said. We all stared at her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't your friends. You don't know them.
I don't mean that. Of course what happened to them is terrible. No, I didn't know them like you guys did, and I get your grief. I know what it's like to lose people, but there are huge things happening, and you're lucky enough to be in the middle of it all. You guys matter.
We're not going to matter if we're dead.
Yeah,
Alice said.
You will. You've already changed the galaxy. Do you even hear those words? You, me-san, have changed the galaxy. I don't think you realize how important you are. I've spent my whole life wishing I could do something significant.
I looked over at Alice, standing with her hands on her hips, looking determined and steady. There was something comforting about having someone like her around. She wasn't unpredictable the way Tamret was, but she was still courageous and resourceful. She was also, I realized, very pretty.
Are you kidding me? Smelly shouted inside my head. Pupils dilating? Respiratory and heart rate acceleration? You don't have enough problems? Snap out of it, Romeo. Keep your eye on the ball or we're going to be toast.
Smelly was, of course, correct. I had to focus on what mattered, and that meant getting everyone through what was coming next. I'd deal with my personal drama later. I checked the time and stood up. If you want to do something significant, I told Alice, then it's your lucky day. Colonel Rage, who had taken the last spying shift, was waiting with Tamret and Volonic on the front lawn. Tamret and the Colonel both had the same stony expression of grim determination. Volonic looked like he was seriously considering having an accident in his trousers.
There's a lot that needs to get done, the Colonel said to all of us. And most of it's reckless. Also, most of it rests on your shoulders. I've spent as much time as I could in the Sims, but you kids know the terrain and technology better than I do. I'll chip in as much as I can, but Steve, you're taking the lead on theft and piloting. Zeke, you're on vehicle weapons. As for me, I'm gonna grab the first pistol I can get a hold of, and if I have to take a blast for one of you, then that's what I'm going to do. These people are trying to get away with murder, injustice, imprisonment, and a coup. Let's go make their lives miserable.
It would have been conspicuous for us to cheer, so we all nodded. The truth is, when you're going on a crazy, possibly suicidal mission against a galactic superpower, it's kind of comforting to have an adult tell you what to do. The Colonel and Steve pushed forward to walk at the front of the group. I decided to take the rear and allowed myself to drift behind. As the Rarls moved ahead of me, Tamrat took a hold of my hand. It was brief, over in the blink of an eye, and she didn't even look at me while doing it, but it fired up my courage. Tamrat had said some things that had hurt me, and her defense of Volonic still stung, but she was reminding me that we were in this together. We approached the transport shuttle dock. There were 2 peace officers on duty and 1 technician. They looked at us and, perhaps for a second, did not see a swaggering band of outlaws come to do something totally illegal.
"This area is off limits to you,"
a turquoise-skinned humanoid peace officer said. Her eye stalks widened and moved slightly towards us. Her partner, an alien who looked like a big cockroach with silver fur, waggled one of its many appendages towards its pistol. I think it was trying to look menacing, but it mostly just looked gross. It all happened so quickly. Me-Sun kicked the blue peace officer in the face and then leapt backwards. Steve, meanwhile, leapt into the air and grabbed the big cockroach's head, or head-like area, or whatever, knocking it into the wall. The cockroach slid down, and a second later Me-Sun's blue combatant fell. They were both out cold. Colonel Rage grabbed the PPD pistol from the first fallen officer and fired at the technician. "Tamrat, you're up," he said. She accessed the transport dock's computer and began typing furiously.
They've upgraded security since the last time we were here.
Does that mean you can't get in?
Charles asked.
Please,
Tamrat said as her fingers danced over the console.
I'm just laughing at them if they think it's going to slow me down. Okay, we're good.
There were transport shuttles docked on the platform. She pointed to the one on the far left.
That one.
I think Junip told us to take the one in the middle,
Charles said.
Yeah, he did,
she agreed.
And I'm telling you to take the one on the left, so who are you going to listen to?
She had a good point. The shuttle Junip had selected for us might be rigged to explode, or crash. Maybe he never intended for us to get into the spaceport in the first place. On the other hand, if Junip had intended for us to get into space before he eliminated us, he might have made some adjustments to the middle shuttle that would make it easier to steal or harder to detect. There was no way to know, but at this point, mistrusting Junip seemed like the safer bet. Once we were inside, Steve took the helm and the rest of us simply strapped in. Transport shuttles had no weapon systems, so we had to hope that no one tried to shoot us down. There wasn't a lot we could do if they tried. Steve liked to pilot fast and recklessly, but this time he took off slowly and eased himself into the clearly established flight patterns over the city.
Just out for a friendly drive,
he told us.
Nothing special here.
I had no doubt he wanted to bank hard and begin buzzing past buildings and zipping between other shuttles, but he kept his cool. There would be plenty of time for recklessness later. It took us about 20 minutes to get to the spaceport. We passed a peace officer patrol, but it didn't give us a second look. At least so far, Junip was good as his word, and no one would bother us. We took a spot in what was, for all practical purposes, a transport shuttle parking lot, and then took a train to a central hub that connected to the various terminals. Once there, we followed the sign to our dock, which involved taking another train and then several plasma field rising walkways, which were essentially glowing blue escalators. I still kept my eye out for any beings who might be pointing and shouting, but like airports back home, the spaceport was crowded with beings who were too busy trying to get from place to place, to worrying about themselves to worry about anyone else. When we reached the ship docking area, we had to study a map and then make our way through a series of massive corridors, each the size of a gigantic warehouse. At long last, we came to our aisle, a half-mile stretch of space garages. We found our particular garage, and then rode an elevating plasma field about 300 feet to reach it. We punched in the code that Junip had given us, and the containment door opened to our ship's individual garage. The ship was nothing much, a standard boxy artifact carrier, with minimal weaponry. But it was our ticket to getting out from under Junip's control, though maybe not in quite the way he had intended. The way it was supposed to work was that we would get into the ship, pressurize it, close the hull door, depressurize the compartment, and then open the space door. Pretty basic, really. We had no intention of doing that, though, since we had no intention of going into space. We got into the ship, which had a layout not so different from that of the shuttle. It was a little cramped and all-terrainian, with control consoles and just enough seats for all of us. I told everyone to take their seat, and just like in the old days, Steve and Tamrat sat up front to operate the vehicle. Volonic hovered near us.
I wish to be next to Tamrat,
he said.
Sit down,
Colonel Rage barked. Volonic slinked to the back and strapped in.
I've downloaded the coordinates for our home worlds to my data bracelet, Tamrat said. So that's one less thing to worry about. Now I'm going through the ship systems. If there's any sabotage, they've hidden it from the onboard computer.
Does that mean we're safe? I asked.
Everything is integrated, she said. If they tinker with one system, there's no way the others won't detect it. Unless they've strapped a bomb to our hull, I think we can assume the ship is fully functional and properly operational.
How do weapons look?
Steve asked. Some light PPB power, I said, which is what we expected, and a targeted laser drill. I think this is some kind of adapted mining ship. We'd be worthless in any kind of space battle, but I think this will do for our purposes. As near as I can tell, without testing, we should be able to cause some damage.
Time to test it then,
Steve said. He fired up the engines. A warning light flashed, telling us that it was improper procedure to start engines before closing the portside door. It began to close the door for us, but Tamrat broke into the system and shut it down.
This might get bumpy,
Steve said.
Also, things could explode.
He then began ever so slowly to back us into the hall. Steve slowly reversed the ship and then turned it to face the length of the hallway. There was barely enough room to do what we were attempting. Steve brushed up against the wall, but I'd already activated the light shielding. This meant that the wall began to crack, but the ship was fine. Vilonic's jaw dropped as he watched our progress through the view screen.
You're going the wrong way!
I thought we'd take a little detour, I told him.
You did not inform me about this,
he shouted. We might have discussed a few details privately, I explained. We hovered for a moment in the corridor, our ship too big for the space we were inhabiting. We were like a dinosaur in a bathroom. Down at the far end of the hallway, beings were panicking, rushing to get out of our way. I looked at Steve. Do you think this is a wise course of action? Charles leaned forward from the back, having recognized the dialogue prompt from Star Trek Nemesis.
We're about to find out.
He was surprisingly cheerful, given that we were about to do something monumentally dangerous.
I guess we are,
Steve said. He eased forward at the slowest possible speed, which I should point out was incredibly fast when you're inside a building and not the vacuum of space. We were down the hall and out into the atrium so quickly I could barely follow it. I felt like I'd left my stomach back in the holding bay. We were now moving through a massive open area. Below us were countless beings pointing upward, scrambling for cover. A cluster of peace officers rushed from one place to another, but I had no idea what they thought they could do. Whatever it was going to be too late.
Hang on!
Steve shouted, unable to disguise his glee. He pointed the nose of the ship upward at the building's glass dome. Then, without warning, we were racing upwards. We struck through the glass, which shattered around us, raining down on the atrium below. We were free of the building and out into the open atmosphere of the station, and heading towards the Forbidden Zone.
It's farther from the compound than any of us have ever been,
Steve said.
About 60 miles. ETA's 3 minutes.
We flew high, closer to the space dome than transports tended to go, mostly so we wouldn't cause an accident. A couple of times we passed peace officers and security patrols, but by the time they could even turn around to face us, we were impossibly distant. The comm console chimed. Message coming in, I told Steve, and Junip's face appeared on the main communication screen.
You're going the wrong way,
he said. Wait, what? I said, affecting confusion.
Zeke, I don't know what you think you're doing, but it's a bad idea.
So you think it would be a good idea for us to head into your trap? I asked.
My trap?
He seemed incredulous.
I didn't want to trap you, I wanted to get rid of you. Do you have any idea what you've done?
Well, we broke the roof of the spaceport. That's going to be a pain to fix, and it looks like rain.
You forced my hand. Now I have to deal with you with the public watching.
Give it a rest, Junip, I said. I know you planned to ambush us the minute we were out of range.
Who told you that?
Dr. Roop, I said with a vindictive sneer.
Roop? How could he have known anything?
If he's so ignorant, why did your men force him off that roof?
What roof? You're out of your mind, Zeke.
I don't think we're getting anything out of him but lies, the colonel said. He's just a distraction. I killed the transmission. If he was going to pretend Dr. Roop hadn't died, when I'd witnessed it with my own eyes, there was no point in trying to trick truths out of him.
That doesn't look too inviting,
Steve said. I looked up at the main view screen. Is that the Forbidden Zone? I asked.
Afraid so,
Steve said. It was huge, spreading out for miles and miles, hot and reflective and uninviting. It undulated with shifting hills and swirling storms. The Forbidden Zone was a vast and mountainous desert, and we were betting our lives that it would provide a way off the station.